One sealed machine bolted to a steel box keeps $100,000 of frozen fish at minus 20 degrees for 6 weeks across an ocean. No engineer touches it. No door opens. It just runs. Roughly a quarter of the world's perishable food, frozen fish, meat, fruit, crosses oceans inside these boxes. One unit failing can spoil a whole container worth tens of thousands of dollars. So the machine can't just work. It has to run alone at sea and fix its own drift before anyone notices. Start with what this box actually is. A reefer is a standard 20 or 40-foot steel shipping container, the same size as any box on the ship, but one whole end is a built-in refrigeration unit instead of a flat wall. That's the only difference from a plain dry box that hauls sneakers or car parts. Here's the part almost everyone gets backwards. A reefer does not freeze warm food. It is not a giant freezer you load with fresh fish. The cargo goes in already frozen, already at minus 20 degrees, and the machine's only job is to hold it there. Think about what fights it. Sun on the steel, warm ocean air, heat leaking through the walls. That heat is always trying to sneak in. So the unit runs a constant battle. It removes the heat that leaks in again and again for the entire voyage. It doesn't create cold. It refuses to let cold escape. So how does one machine keep pulling heat out of a sealed box, hour after hour? It runs a loop, the same loop humming behind your kitchen fridge right now, just built industrial scale. Follow the loop around. First, a compressor squeezes the refrigerant gas hard. Squeezing anything raises its pressure and heat, so the gas comes out hot, hotter than the ocean air outside. Now that heat has somewhere to go. The hot gas flows into the condenser, a radiator that dumps its heat to the outside air, and as it cools, the gas turns to liquid. Next comes the clever part. The liquid passes through a narrow expansion valve, and on the far side its pressure drops away. When pressure crashes, temperature crashes with it. The refrigerant turns bitterly cold. That frigid liquid flows into the evaporator inside the box, where it soaks up heat from the cargo air and boils back into gas. Cold delivered. Then the gas returns to the compressor and the whole loop starts over. Compress, dump the heat outside, drop the pressure, absorb heat inside, repeat. One question is still open. How does that cold actually reach fish buried in the middle of a packed box? Cold gas in a coil is useless if it never reaches the cargo. That's the other half of the machine. Airflow. The unit blows chilled air down and then up through the floor. The floor isn't flat. It's a T-shaped grooved deck called T-bar decking full of channels. Cold air races along those grooves, then rises up through and around every box, picking up heat as it climbs. Warmed, it drifts back to the unit, gets re-chilled and starts the trip again. The whole container is one slow, deliberate loop of moving air. Now the catch. If you stack cargo tight against the walls or block the return path, the air can't circulate. And when air stops moving, you get warm pockets buried in the load, even though the machine is running perfectly. The compressor's fine. The refrigerant's fine, but that trapped box of fish quietly warms up. That's why loaders leave deliberate air channels and never pack to the ceiling. One more thing, the unit doesn't blast cold nonstop. You set a target, say minus 20 degrees, and it cycles on and off to hold that number steady like a thermostat, not a switch stuck full open. Here's a question the machine can't answer on its own. Where do 6 weeks of electricity come from? The container carries no fuel and no battery. Not a drop. It needs continuous outside power the entire trip, and the whole shipping system is built around handing it off. Aboard the ship, each reefer plugs into the vessel's own generator through a heavy socket, a reefer plug. The ship burns fuel. The box just draws current. At the port, cranes lift it onto a rack of powered outlets called a reefer rack, so it stays cold on the dock. On a train, it plugs into powered rail slots. And on a truck for the last stretch, a small diesel generator, a genset, clips right onto the front and feeds it. The box itself never changes. It's the same passive steel container the whole way. What changes is who's holding the plug. Ship, port, rail, truck. Each one has to keep the power flowing because the second that plug goes dead, the loop stops and the heat starts winning. Power flowing is one thing. Surviving 6 weeks with nobody watching is another. Inside the unit sits a small computer, a microprocessor controller that logs the temperature continuously and nudges the machine to hold the target. It's the reason the box can be trusted alone. But alone has limits. On the ship, crews still walk the rows daily and check reefer temperatures by hand. And modern units phone home. They report their status remotely, so an operator on shore can spot a box drifting warm and act before the cargo is lost. A warning, days early, instead of a ruined container on arrival. There's a further trick for cargo that's chilled rather than frozen. Think fresh fruit that keeps ripening. Ripening is really the fruit breathing, giving off carbon dioxide and a gas called ethylene that speeds spoilage. So some reefers run a controlled atmosphere. They pump in nitrogen to push out oxygen and scrub away the carbon dioxide and ethylene. Starve the fruit of what it needs to ripen, and a mango can cross an ocean and still arrive days from ready. So the box holds itself steady, calls for help when it can't, and for some cargo even slows down time. Now the whole thing clicks together. A passive steel box that only slows heat down. One vapor compression loop pulling that heat out. Disciplined airflow carrying the cold to every carton. And an unbroken plug feeding it the entire way. Stack those four, and frozen fish loaded in one country arrives thousands of miles later, still locked at minus 20 degrees. So here's the real answer to the 6 weeks. It was never one heroic machine grinding for 40 days. It's the same fridge cycle you have at home, running continuously, doing nothing clever, just never stopping. The genuine feat isn't the compressor. It's the handoffs. Ship to port to rail to truck, plug after plug after plug, and not one of them going dark. Break any single link and the whole chain fails. The miracle isn't the cold. It's that the cold never once breaks. So what does this actually mean for you, standing in the frozen aisle? That bag of shrimp caught halfway around the world didn't survive by luck. It rode a cold chain, a relay of powered boxes where the cold could never pause. Next time you hear a story about spoiled cargo or a rejected shipment, you'll know the failure almost never lives in the machine. It lives in a gap. A plug that came loose, a box packed too tight, a handoff nobody watched. The technology is quietly reliable. It's the chain around it that has to hold. Remember the one lines. A reefer holds cold, it never makes it. And it only works if power and airflow never break. Next up, we crack open the ship itself. How one engine the size of a house burns fuel to haul all these boxes across the sea. Subscribe and we'll open that box together.